It's Zach Eady with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
We are live back on Boilers in the Stands for number 3 in our Big Ten offseason preview, kind of an early offseason preview. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. We're talking Nebraska, Northwestern, and also Indiana today, joined by Tonsoni of Assembly Call. Appreciate you coming on. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks, Joe and Kraig, for inviting me and calling me a friend of me on Twitter. At least I got the friend part of that here as I join your show. I really appreciate from afar what you guys do in covering basketball. I know it's time consuming, but it's also fun. So I'm glad to be here and hopefully can share some insight on next year's Indiana Hoosier team.
Yeah, I told Joe I think that's the first time in my life I've ever used that word, but we thought it fit for the IU Purdue rivalry a little bit here. So,
absolutely.
Joe, you want to dive right into IU?
Yeah, let's do it. So, first up is Indiana, 23-12 record, 12-8 in Big Ten. Second round tournament loss to Miami, number 28 offense, number 45 defense per Ken Pom. And there's just going to be a lot of questions, I think, surrounding Indiana in general. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but when you lose, Trace Jackson Davis and you lose Jalen Hood-Schifino from a team that relied on those two heavily, there's naturally just going to be questions. So just kind of brief overview, like what's your kind of overall thoughts heading into next season?
Well, anytime you lose 4 starters, you're getting actually one starter back that was injured, but you're losing 4 starters and 2 pros who was drafted by the NBA. Those are some big shoes to fill. And so the natural tendency is to believe a step backwards. And I think if anyone was predicting that, they would be somewhat correct. Coach Woodson has gone out and gotten a different type of athlete, though, in his recruits, a lot more athleticism, which is what he wanted to do from the start of his tenure. And so he replaced all of the people who left with some 6 new players with some talent and some length. And so the key is, how are you going to fit all that? And does that talent reach? How much of their potential do they reach? So I think Indiana fans are optimistic that we got some players that came in. It's not totally rebuilding. We have some players. It's just how are they going to fit in and how well are they going to reach their potential in a summer and mesh together, I think are some of the big overlying questions for this Indiana team next year.
All right. And a little bit to your point there, in terms of points per game returning for IU next year, 31%. Minutes per game returning for IU next year, 35%. Games started returning for IU next year, 22%. So Yeah, definitely. Quite a bit of production leaving there, and like you said, arguably, I realize some IU fans might make a bigger argument, but arguably the second best player in the country going to the draft last year, and then a guy that came in as a freshman and kind of lived up to the hype in terms of a guy that could come in and make an immediate impact, where maybe some other freshmen don't necessarily always do that, even if they do end up being one and done guys. He was somebody that impacted winning for IU at an extremely high level last year. So still, though, bringing back Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, Malik Renew, in terms of three guys that were pretty high production. And you also got Caleb Banks, CJ Gunn, and Anthony Leal coming back too. I guess in your mind, Brian, maybe, of those guys, who do you see as being the key in terms of returning players being the key to making this thing work next year?
I think the answer is really two players. Xavier Johnson is going to be the key. One of the nice things is when you have a 6-year point guard coming back as a newcomer, that's not a freshman coming in to run the point and going through some of those ups and downs. But he has been up and down as a player, too, in his career. When he played the best, not last year, the year before, when Indiana made a run in the Big Ten tournament to get into the NCAA tournament, he was playing his best. He was scoring, he was passing, he was guarding. If that Xavier Johnson shows up, that is going to be a huge benefit for Indiana. So I think he's the key to get the offense started, to get the defense with ball pressure. Indiana fell in the Ken Pom rankings last year defensively, and I believe some of it was the lack of ball pressure at the point guard. Xavier Johnson is just one of those guys that creates a lot of havoc, and that will be coming back with experience. That's a plus. The other is Renew. What's his game? Is he a low post guy? Can he shoot? The game of basketball, gentlemen, is 4 guys on the perimeter driving and shooting the three and one guy posting up, if you have one guy posting up. The small ball era is here, and Indiana has had guys with Race Thompson that needed to score at the rim, and Trace Jackson Davis needed to score at the rim. If Renew needs to score at the rim, who's going to be that 4 to stretch the floor? We've talked about it on our show forever. Do you have enough shooting to stretch the floor? It's what your Purdue Boilermakers, when you're winning, you do really, really well. You stretch the floor because your 4s can shoot the basketball. Indiana has not had that, and we've not had 2s and 3s that can shoot the basketball. So I think those two returning players have the most talent and have some experience, and I think Renew I like the way he plays, but he fouled a lot, and his time was limited. And what is his game? Is it an inside-outside game or inside game, and how is he going to be utilized? But he's going to have a good year, I think, wherever he is implemented for Indiana to benefit from the returners. Love Trey Galloway, coach's kid. Just, if you're playing against Galloway, you don't like him because he's just flying all over the place. His shooting got better, but he's going to be there. But I think Renew's development and Good X getting back as soon as possible after a year, almost a whole year layoff, those are the keys to the returning players coming back for the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, and that leads us probably to the newcomers, right? You mentioned 6 newcomers. There's 3 transfers in Peyton Sparks, Khalil Ware, Anthony Walker, and then 3 freshmen in Gabe Cubs, Ja'Kai Newton, and then a late addition in Mackenzie McBacco. McBacco's, number 8, I think, in the country. He's top 10 for sure. I don't know exactly where he ended up within that, but he's the big name, the big headliner. And at least in all the discourse I see is, right, and from what I've seen watching him, tough shot maker. I really like his footwork. Just, he's a dude that's going to be able to put the ball in the basket. The question is can he be a 3? And that's just kind of been fair or unfair. That's kind of been the question around IU in general, is who's going to kind of be that. Are they going to force McBacco to be that, try to pair him next to, potentially like Aware and Renew, something like that? Like, how does this big room work? Specifically with McBacco, do you think he could be a 3? Do you think he's more of a 4, and they'll have to figure it out from there?
That's my biggest fear, Joe, as an IU guy, is we need him as a 3, but he's more of a 4. I think he's got the skills to play the 3. 6'7", 6'8" guys at the 3 are commonplace now. I think he has a shot. I think he has the ability to drive. He's a matchup problem. If you put a smaller wing on him, you can run him into the post, but that depends on your 4s and 5s being able to stretch the floor. The Ware kid can shoot a little bit. It was under 30%, I think, with low volume at Oregon. But if the fours can stretch out, now you can run them in. I would love to see him as a fan be productive at the 3, because if not, you got a log jam now with some players at the 4, traditional 4 and 5. The traditional 1 through 5 is probably gone, if we're honest. But I still use it as an old coach just to know where players are playing. Yeah, Mbako from the newcomers is going to be the reason why Indiana matches what they did last year or gets in the tournament, because you get a top 10 player who is committed to Duke. If he could be put in the right position, that 3 or 4 question is going to be there. He can dominate games offensively. I think that's the talent that Indiana hasn't had. And then the Ware kid was a top 10 the year before, but ran into some questions about motor and how hard he played, but he has that top 10 ability. And when I said at the preview of the year, those 2 types of talents coming in, they just lack experience with Coach Woodson. They lack experience with the returning players. That's the big key. How do they mesh, and do they reach that top 10 potential? We've seen a lot of players come in. We had one in Tamar Bates who is really highly regarded, and he didn't work out after 2 years and transferred to Missouri. So just because you're rated high doesn't mean you're going to come in and automatically produce. That's what IU fans, we automatically think the highest of their potential. They have that ability to pop, but they're going to have to do that. And then don't underestimate Gabe Cupps. I don't know how he compares to Smith, but they're the same type of heady ball player, playmaker, can score, can find the open man, love the game, gym rat type of guy. I know that the summer workouts, the coaches are just loving what he's doing down there as a backup to Xavier. It's nice that he can come in and learn from Xavier and then be ready to go. Doesn't have to necessarily produce major time. But Gabe Cupps is that name. Ja'Kai Newton's been injured, had an injury his senior year, and I think they're going to ease him back in. And the 2 post players transfers are going to be limited minute guys, to come in, beat up on Edie for a couple of fouls, in Peyton Sparks and those types of things. But I like what Woodson did. I mean, we lost a lot of players, but he brought in talent. But that talent has to be realized, and that's just the big question. But as Mbako, that's the key. If he can play the 3 and do it well, and I think there'll be some times when he slips down and plays with one post player, and you bring in a Caleb Banks and a C.J. Gunn, and you have length. C.J. Gunn's 6'5", Banks is 6'7", and Mbako at the 4 is 6'8". I mean, you want length and athleticism in the college game, and Woodson is getting that. He did not have that in his first 2 years, and he managed to get to the tournament despite that. Miller Kopp loved him, but not the greatest athlete. Race Thompson, same thing, just a bulldog, right, but not the greatest athlete. So he's transitioning to where he wants to be. It's just when you put a bunch of newcomers together with those veterans, it's going to be an interesting mix.
Yeah, and I guess one of the questions that I have, just kind of looking at the team from the outside, is, is there enough guard play there behind Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway? And CJ Gunn, to me, is almost like, we've had some players at Purdue over time that weren't getting the minutes, and there was kind of this fan push of like, why isn't he playing more? Why isn't he playing more? And I kind of saw that with Gunn to some degree, where there was kind of this lore around him that maybe he was a better shooter, better player in fans' eyes than what was realized on the court last year. From what or have heard about, seen from CJ Gunn, is he a guy you expect to make that big jump and be that 3rd guard that's really important next year?
Craig, I do. I just don't know when. It's a timing issue for me. I believe in CJ Gunn, but sometimes players of his caliber, when they come out, they get to their potential their junior year, or the second half of their junior year. Maybe it's the start of his sophomore year. That would be great for Indiana. But I really believe what I saw in high school at Lawrence North, he can be a good college basketball player. It's just the timing. When is that potential going to be reached? The sooner the better for Indiana Hoosiers, because of the need for guard play behind Galloway and so forth. And the same can be said with the young man Caleb Banks. A lot of potential, but potential isn't anything until it's realized on the court. Coach Painter said this in several times when I was there for Delphi bracketology, that you don't get experience. You get good experience in practice, but the game experience is so much better. And I forget who he was talking about, whether it was Newman or someone else at some point, that it's just hard to improve to get more minutes until you get those minutes. It's kind of a catch-22 thing. And what you see in C.J. Gunn is he got limited minutes, and then he sped up. He played faster than he needed to. He didn't understand the pace of the game, and so he only hit a couple three-pointers, and his stats look awful from three-point range. If he can learn to slow the game down. But for me, guys, he will play at Indiana, or if he decides, hopefully he never transfers out. I like him, but he will be a decent college basketball player. It's just a matter for me of what time. And if he does, if it's not this year, then that limits where Indiana can go, in my opinion. But I'm a big believer in both Gunn and Banks because of their length and their athleticism and just the quality of player and person that they are.
Yeah, I watched some of Gunn in high school and stuff, but there's just he went 2 of 24 from 3 this year. Like that's just not happening again. Like I fully expect him to get to probably a mid 30s. Honestly, I'm pretty high on the shooting, even higher than that if it really connects, like you say it could. And I think that will be a big one. Just having that's kind of that secondary guard. You would like it to be Newton, but obviously, like you said, the injury. I know he came back and played for a couple weeks on it in high school just to kind of finish out, but he seems like he would be that explosive kind of 2 guard that IU doesn't really have. But they still do have Johnson, like you said. Galloway is going to do his job. Like you said, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's not, you kind of hate him just because he's the dude that's always making the plays, always in the right spot, antagonizing.
I don't know if you guys have this with Purdue and your fans, but there's always someone everyone wants to move out of the starting lineup, right? Last year was Miller Kopp. Get Miller Kopp out of the starting lineup in the summer, right? We want this. And then this year with all the new talent coming in, everyone's like, well, Trey Galloway's a great 6-man candidate. But Trey Galloway does a lot of things that don't show up in the stat box that coaches just absolutely love. And so I think Trey Galloway is going to start and play a lot of minutes for the Indiana Hoosiers. But it's always interesting. The backup quarterback's always the favorite, and there's always 1 or 2 guys that the fans think should be moved to the bench and come off the bench. Galloway has been that this summer, but I think Hoosier fans will appreciate what he does at the end of his career.
So they're wanting a point guard and 4 forward/centers to start? Is that what they're calling for?
Well, fan bases. No, I think they want – initially it was C.J. Gunn, and
Gotcha.
What I'm talking about there was when the transfer portal was coming in, we need a shooter. We need a shooter for that 2 guard. And so the fan base all summer when the roster was being constructed was aiming to get a shooting guard in and then move Galloway to the second unit. That's where that came from.
I gotcha.
Is there do you know of anything if IU's still looking at guys? I know they've tried to fill that last scholarship spot, kind of have made some final cuts, but not quite gotten players to come, or at least for the last spot. Do you know if there's anybody that they're kind of looking at?
Not actively. It's kind of set. They're going to, I think, keep that open in case something does pop, mid-year, or maybe, I don't know how all that works with this transfer portals. Again, I'm old. I don't understand transfer windows and NIL payments and all that kind of stuff is beyond me. But I don't know actively that there is someone that they're trying to get in to fill that 12 spot. And as a college basketball, really, I think you need 10 or 11 guys. And then you fill maybe your last 2 scholarships with someone to develop or will be a 4-year starter and is okay with all that. There's just not enough basketballs in the college game to go around, and especially with the transfer portal, you got to, be careful. Your 8-9-man rotations seem to be the best idea as you look at teams that are successful in college basketball.
Yeah, for sure. So one of my last questions, I don't know if Craig has any more, but Woodson's heading into year 3, right? Yeah, year 3. He's run more of a pro style compared to what we've seen elsewhere in the Big Ten. A lot of that has been, being able to get Trace and running to the rim or rolling or posting up and having him spray out from there, or just take it to the hoop, obviously. What have you seen kind of from year 1 to year 2 that you liked from Woodson? And is there anything you're hoping to see kind of from year 2 to year 3? Obviously, given that, we're not on the sidelines, we don't get to know all the little details that go into it all.
Yeah, I think he's really good at utilizing who he has. And while I haven't been a big fan of the stand and watch Trace Jackson Davis post up offense, and I've been critical of that on the assembly call, Trace Jackson-Davis was pretty good, and Hood Shafino on a pull-up was pretty good. And so why not go to them? I think his best strength is coming out of timeouts. I think he's really good at the ATOs. I do. I think he got better in year 2 in substituting. He had a hockey-type style in his first year, and there were big runs with the second unit. I think he was better by feel a little bit. I thought he took control. My big thing with Coach Woodson is in the pros, you talk to your point guard in the pregame, and the point guard runs the show. And he brought that to Indiana, and college kids aren't ready for that. You need to be either you or an offensive coordinator needs to be ready to call the plays. I know when I go to watch Purdue, there's someone writing on the board all the time what offensive set if they're not in transition. My understanding of college basketball, it's limited. I'm a high school coach, is that you just need to have a little more control because the pros, that's their job, and they're doing it all the time. It's just a different level. I thought he got better at directing the offense a little bit more in the second year. And now he says he wants to play a different style. So I think he wants to play a little more athletic and not so much heavy post dominated, but he did because that's what he had. So overall, I think Coach Woodson does a good job in building staff. Jordan Hulls and Kelbert Cheney are back. That's great. And that has worked out. I think he does a good job at relationships with the players. I know they appreciate his honesty. And so I've always said once he gets that feel for what he does best and how that matches to college, then he'll be at his best. And he'll have to do that this year in putting all these newcomers with the veterans in order to get back to the same spot he was last year.
Yeah. So I think we're to the point now, Joe, here where we can talk about some floors and ceilings. So I guess, just as you come into this season with all the newcomers, with losing 70% essentially of scoring from this team from last year, what do you think their ceiling is, and what do you think their floor is in terms of like Big Ten finish and postseason success?
We got into a big debate on one of our shows here recently. I think the absolute ceiling is this team reaches its potential individually. It meshes. I think it's a second weekend NCAA tournament team, Sweet 16. It can be. Because of the talent. You get Mbako and Ware, top 10 talent, Xavier Johnson back playing Xavier Johnson basketball, Renew improving a lot. I think they can match what they did last year, a 4 or 5 seed, and win a game. Instead of losing to Miami, win that game and go to the Sweet 16, and then it's matchups, right? Then it's just matchups when you get to that point. I think that's their ceiling. In the Big Ten, I think their ceiling is the same what they were. They were 3 seed, that getting that double bye, that they can reach, second, third, fourth, maybe challenge for a Big Ten championship if the breaks fall their way. I think that's the ceiling. The floor is that this team doesn't mesh. It's got great talent. We've seen number 1 picks go to Louisiana, Washington, and their teams don't make the NCAA tournament before. So just bringing in talent doesn't guarantee. It's got to be a mesh with the coaches and the players. So this is a team in the bottom half. The floor is the bottom half of the Big Ten and fighting for on the bubble. I think that's the floor for this team. I don't think they're like no chance of making the NCAA tournament at its worst, but my fear is that they're going to need to win a game or two in the Big Ten to get a 10-11 seed. And I think the reality is somewhere in the middle. I think you look at Illinois last year, they brought in 2 outstanding players, but their point guards didn't work out. They didn't plan it. They thought they had point guards, but it didn't work out, and the team didn't mesh like previous Illinois teams. And so, they were a 8-9 seed. You had Michigan State at a 9 seed in the tournament, and yet they had Terrence Shannon and Meyer and those types of players that everyone was high on in the transfer. So I think reality is probably somewhere 6 to 9 seed, and some really good play, but some tough play. I think defensively is my biggest concern of this team. When you get a bunch of people that are new, everyone loves to put the ball in the basket, but does everyone like to get down in the stance and play on a string and play together, team basketball, transition defense? And Indiana dropped in those KenPom rankings last year with the veteran team to like 45, I think you said. I don't have the numbers right ahead, but that's my main concern. Yeah, 45. My main concern is they fall in that area, and if you don't play defense, you don't win. I mean, you guys saw that you had a talented team a couple years ago, and defensively you struggled, and it ended up costing you guys in the tournament. So I'm a big defensive-minded guy as a fan, as a high school coach. So my number one concern is where they're going to be average or to the floor is if the defensive side doesn't gel together. But I think they'll make the tournament. And I think they'll be wearing a white jersey on the first day of the tournament, whether that's a 4 or a 5 or a 7 or an 8. I think that's where the talent and the coaching staff it should be. Anything less than that will be disappointed. But I think that's reality. I don't think this is a championship team. I don't think it's a Final Four team. That was the discussion on our group. There were some of our hosts who thought that if everything went well, they could probably make a Final Four. But Final Four is it's a luck of the draw, you know. To me, you challenge for a Big Ten championship, and you get to that second weekend. That's a good year, no matter what your roster is. And if you can do that consistently, I think that's a good Big Ten basketball program, and that's where Indiana's trying to get back to.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm on the same page with you almost exactly in terms of where I put their floor and their ceiling. Second weekend tournament team, maybe finish third in the Big Ten if everything comes together and all these pieces fit together. My big questions is just, is there enough guard play there? And then how do you make all these new pieces fit? Extremely talented guys coming in, but just how does it all fit and how does it all work together? Is there enough 3-point shooting behind Xavier and Trey? With Trey not really shooting a high volume of them, even though he shoots them at a really high percentage. So yeah, I'm at that ceiling is third in the Big Ten, floor is like worst 9th or so in the Big Ten, and then second weekend in the tournament is the ceiling. If everything comes together, and then like you said, anything can happen from that point on. So
yeah, I'm pretty much in lockstep. My ceiling was 4, my floor is 9. I think my biggest concern is just how this big room kind of shakes out. Can Ware played the 5 last year for Oregon. I think he can be a 4. But if he's a 5, now you do have Ware, Renew, Sparks, who are all pretty much 5s. McBacco, we'll see kind of like we already talked about the 3-4. That'll be my kind of biggest thing. See what happens with that room.
Yeah, and Craig, you bring up something too about the guard play. I'm just longing for a knockdown shooter. Just give me that 2 guard. And I love Trey Galloway, and Trey Galloway will start, and I'm a big fan of his, and I'm not asking for him to be on the second unit like everyone else was. But give me that 45%, 44% guy coming off a screen, and now the post play is much easier, and the drive game is much easier because you've got to do everything you can to switch out on that guy. And Trey's not that, and CJ wasn't that last year. And I think that's a good point that you make. Indiana, for the state, known for shooting, the shooting has not gone south to Bloomington for a while. I think maybe James Blackman type. Trying to think, we had a few transfers that could hit Ziesloff and all that, but you're talking 6-7 years. None in the Archie era. So back 7-8 years since Indiana's really had that presence of, my gosh, you got to run out hard on a shooter. So yeah, there's some questions. The thing that, again, the positive from this guy is we got talent. It's not a total rebuild where you are sitting down 10 or 11 for a year until your freshman play and then, work out to be sophomores and all of that. That's the nice thing about the transfer portal. As much as it drives me nuts, you can reload a little bit quicker.
Right.
It's just the pieces have to fit together so we can only
and one of the notes that I wrote down when I was kind of going through everything, I didn't realize that Newton had gotten hurt. I missed that when I was going through stuff, but I put down Cups is going to have to play early and often in my mind on this team. And I also put in my notes a little bit of Braden Smith in his game, just in terms of the way that he reads the floor, the way that he passes. People didn't necessarily think Braden Smith was going to come in and, Smith put up some numbers last year that only 3 or 4 guards have put up as freshmen in the last 20 years in the Big Ten, being ranked in the 200s. And, Cups is ranked 93rd. And you look at him on tape and he reads a lot like Smith. So in my mind, I think that he's probably going to have to play early and often. And how much he does backing up those 2 guards, I think may tell a lot in terms of where they go.
I tell you what, the Smith kid and Cups, they both have a knack for the game and want to be coached. I think that was the best thing I heard about Smith last year from Coach Painter in the media was, he's accountable to himself. And then when the coach has to get on him, and I see the same thing in Gabe Cups. And I'm looking forward to those two going head to head for a few years because they're maximizing their ability with intelligence and hard work. And from your fan base, from our fan base, I know our fan base is going to love Gabe Cups, just like I think your fan base loves your freshman guards because they lay it on the line. And in this era of transfer portal and NIL, that's kind of nice little flavor to have on your roster. You appreciate the talent and you appreciate all of that other stuff as well. But I do think Cups is going to have to play a major role. Newton's going to be good. It's just how healthy is his knee and how quick do they bring him back to a full level. I think he's been cleared to practice and do some things, but I still think what we're hearing is that they might take it a little bit easy with him for a little bit, and that's where CJ Gunn and those people. But a lot of good points you guys made. We're just glad to have, when I get the bracket and hang it on my wall back here, the big life-size bracket that Indiana's been on it for a couple years. You guys have had our number for a while, so we just want to get back to making it a rivalry, and hopefully we can keep putting a little pressure on you guys.
Well, you definitely did that last year, and it was painful to watch.
Yeah.
And you still talk to me at the Big Ten tournament, Craig. I mean, I appreciate that.
I did. You got to keep, what is it? You got to keep your friends close and your frenemies closer.
That's right.
All right. Do you have anything else, Craig?
I don't.
All right, then we will let you go. Appreciate you coming on, talking Indiana.
Yep.
2 great games probably coming up this year between Purdue and IU. Depending especially on how IU works out. Let everybody know where they can find you, Twitter and assembly call and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Sony42. I think I'm on Threads now. Do we have to start saying Threads? At Babsoni on Threads. But Assembly Call, we do a weekly show on Thursday nights and every post game. We do that as well. So you can find us. Also follow us, Delphi Bracketology. You'll see us at Mackey Arena a lot with some students covering the game for Delphi Bracketology. And so that's where you can follow what we do. And again, keep following these guys. Joe and Craig, you guys do a good job. This guy popping in on the right, I don't know if he does as good a job as you two. Obviously, his Wi-Fi is not so good.
He's probably trying to join on his cell phone. There he is.
There's my guy.
Who is this guy in here?
They let anybody in the show now.
I just barged my way in. I just saw you were live, and I was like, I got to come in here and give my guy, Coach, some shit. Because, is this the year Purdue finally gets Mike Woodson's number? Because I'm tired of you with that shit-eating grin as we're walking out of Mackey. I had enough of it last year.
Well, I hope not, because it sure was fun. You guys, I was just telling those guys, you had our way for a long time. So,
we're greedy. We're greedy. We want more,
as you should be.
But I will give Mike Woodson credit. He actually has got Matt Painter's number a bit. So we'll see if you can handle it this year. But I wanted to come in and say hi because I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, Greg. You're the best. Appreciate what you do and getting what you guys do for this post game show. We're all in it together, even if we are frenemies, as Craig called me earlier. You guys are the best, and I appreciate talking to you. And when you're a basketball fan of a program, it's a lot of fun when you bring this information to fellow fans. And so kudos to all of you guys. For what you do. I said it earlier, I know it's a grind sometimes to hurry up and get on and to do things. So I really have an appreciation for what you guys do, even if it is for the rival.
Well, at the very least, we can agree on the Chicago Bears, who are going to be back this year.
Let's go. Chicago Bears.
I knew Craig was going to, have a face about that. I haven't gotten a Craig face on a show in a while. But you're going to find out the hard way if you don't believe Craig. So we'll see. All right, that's it for me. I had to come in and blitzkrieg the show for a minute, but I'm going to keep a close eye on you this upcoming basketball season, Coach. So we'll see you at Mackey.
All righty, my friend. We'll see you.
Later, guys.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Have a great show. Nebraska. Watch Nebraska. I have a feeling that they're going to pop, right, Kraig? So there's always a surprise team. Last year, Northwestern, right, and Penn State.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see where you guys finally put your total rankings down for that. But, again, thanks for having me on. Have a good evening.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on.
Yep. Thank you. See, perfect seg. He gives us the perfect segue, and he agrees with me in what I said before the show started. Of like, I'm low key kind of high on this Nebraska team this year.
Then let's get into them. They finished 16-16 last year, 9-11 in Big Ten play. Missed the tourney. This is what kind of surprised me. Like when I found their numbers, number 149 in offense and number 89 in defense. Not what. Like I think it's because you think of Tominaga. Like when you think of Nebraska, right? And then like that's just offense, but it really was their defense. They're a defense that just forced a ton of jumpers and they kind of lived with it and it worked out a lot. So 149 in offense, 89 in defense. They lose a lot, but they do bring in a good amounts. Losses, Derek Walker, Sam Griesel, Emmanuel Bandamel. Those were the three that were like, and Wilhelm Bradenbach. Those were the four that were like in rotation. Denham Dawson, McPherson, more younger guys. Same with Kohanitz. Bring in six. Yeah, they just added a new freshman. But transfers, Rank Moss, Bryce Williams, Aaron Eulis from Iowa, Josiah Ilick, and then the two freshmen are Eli Rice and Matar Diop. That was a mouthful. But yeah, this is a team that last year was just a ton of fun. I think we have to start with Tominaga and just what he did kind of towards the end of the season for them, right? Just kind of went on a tear. I forget all the stats, but at one point he was like averaging like 23 a game over like the course of 4 or 5 games. And he's going to be on offense, probably the number one option this year. I think you can make an argument he wasn't last year for a good chunk of it. But this year it's no doubt him. So I'm interested to see where he goes with that. Where do you kind of want to start with them?
So I'll just go big picture here. And you've seen the spreadsheet that I put together. And when I go through that for each team, I highlight cells in yellow for things that I think are positive, and I highlight cells in red for things that I think are big negatives. The thing that jumped out to me when I was going through Nebraska, I couldn't hardly find any like big red flags on anybody that was going to be a significant contributor for this team. They just a bunch of dudes that look really balanced, that do a lot of things pretty well. And when I think back to Iowa State, Fred Hoiberg teams, those teams that were really good had a lot of guys that were kind of positionless and can move around. They could get out and go. They could pressure a little bit. They could all score. Maybe not a guy that was going to be a big-time scorer at 20 points a game, but they could all score. And just all did the little things really well. And as I kind of look at this group, I'm like, man, he's kind of maybe putting together that group he's been trying to put together since he got out there to Nebraska. And, last year, Tominaga is really Nebraska's only 3-point shooting threat from a percentage standpoint that you're like, I have to guard him. They bring in a
3-point percentage.
Right. So they bring in a kid from Charlotte that shoots 40%. They bring in a center that can pick and pop and shoot, 35, 36%. I just think they put some pieces around him. And Hoiberg kind of came on late in the season in terms of getting more minutes. His son, Sam, and he was shooting 41% from three, not on high volume, but a guy that can still hit some. So, in my mind, I'm kind of wondering, well, maybe now they've surrounded Tominaga with some guys that can shoot a little bit better, and they can't just focus on trying to shut him down from three when he gets going. And if that's the case, maybe he makes continues that big late season run. And then you got some guys out there that can all score. Charlotte, it's not a Power 5 conference or Power 6 conference, but they're in a pretty decent league. So what Williams did and at his size and what he does translates. It's not like he's a 5'10" guard coming into the Big Ten that scored a bunch by driving to the rim, right? He's a big, long wing that shoots threes. Like that's going to translate. That's where I'm at. I'm low key kind of high on them. That maybe, and when I say high on them, maybe they break into that second group that's in that 3rd through 9th, 8th, 9th group in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that would be the jump for them. They finished. They finished 11th, I think, right, in the Big Ten. I could just look really quick. Yeah. No, that would make sense. Be kind of making that jump up to this next group, being get that first round bye in the Big Ten tourney. If things break right, maybe even compete for an at-large bid in the NCAA tourney. I think my biggest concern, I agree with a lot that you said, right? They bring in shooters and things like that. My biggest concern is probably the defense, and it's just I go back and forth, right? Because I don't know if Nebraska had any elite defenders per se, but I think Griesel was good. He was a 6'7" point guard. Didn't always guard point guards, but still was a long dude that kind of fits that system, right? They were even running a no middle defense like the first 5 games, kind of transitioned to this just like super over help, like we're bringing 4 guys across the midline to help type it's almost like a zone, but not quite. So then I think of that as like, well, okay, do you need good defenders in that, or do you just need dudes that can buy into that system? So I think that's gonna be, I guess, my biggest question is, does that hold up? And a lot of it was I think they were 350th in defensive 3-point attempt rate. Like they just forced a ton of threes. They packed it in the paint. Walker was just a big dude. I like the mass pickup to kind of replace that, and I think but I don't think he's not a one-to-one for sure. Does some different stuff. Alec would be the closer comparison for me to him. Is this kind of more this 6'8" big that can kind of facilitate, more hustle type player. But I am excited to see them. If Hoiberg can get the offense going a little bit more efficiently, the shooting, like you said, with Bryce Williams, like I see why this team could be good. The defense has to hold, and then if that happens, you're expecting, some shooting bump, and that can take you from 9-11 last year to 11-9, and that's a huge difference in the Big Ten.
Right, and I mean that's kind of the same thing that I wrote down in my notes, just as kind of going through the film on those guys, is like, can they defend in the Big Ten? Can they defend in the Big Ten? Like, can they do that or not? And I mean, because their best offensive player is not going to be a great defender on this team either. So I don't know if there's enough defense there either. But I think they're a team that could just sling it around and score a lot of points, personally.
And that's what
when I looked at Mast, numbers, I was like, okay, like I hadn't looked at his size yet, and I was like, well, if he played at Bradley and he shot that well from 3 and yada yada, well, he's probably not very big. And then I scanned over and he's 6'10", and I'm like, okay, no, he's got some size, and you watch him move on the court, and hey, maybe there's not that many big centers in the Big Ten this year.
No,
you've got. Reese. I mean, not like some of the previous years. You've got Edey, you've got Rutgers. Help me, Amori. Yeah, geez. And you got Reese at Maryland, but Reese doesn't really. He doesn't body up super physical at Maryland either. So, maybe he holds up on his own in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah. Before IU fans come at us, Renew could be that too. Terrace Reed could be that for Michigan. They're not. Fair. I think they could. I expect both of them to make big jumps.
All right, but Renew is what, 6'9", 6'8"? Like he's kind of small. He ain't a real big dude. He's physical, but he's not real big.
Yeah, that's more what I was going for, was physical.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and then on offense, I like the Ulis pickup as kind of this replacement. He's not going to do any. He's not going to. I don't think he's a ceiling raiser really for this team, but I think he brings up that floor compared to what you could have had at point guard. Just to do that, that'll do his job. Can provide some decent defense, facilitate a bit. Hopefully, the shooting bumps up just a bit. And then Tominaga, Wilcher. That's gonna be a fun duo scoring. You throw Williams like in there. That's three dudes that can score. Wilcher. I don't remember. I think he started off really efficient and then maybe fell off a bit. I'm trying to look at the stats right now.
He was only 31% from 3 last year.
I think he started hot and then fell off. But you got Tominaga, and the dude is probably the most fun player to watch, whether, getting rid of talent or at least one of the most fun players to watch in the Big Ten. Obviously plays with the joy that we all love to see. But what are you kind of expecting from him this year?
I mean, I think there's a chance he's all Big Ten, right? I mean, in terms of returning guards in the Big Ten, obviously there's quite a bit of talent there, which we're going to talk about. Bowie, Michigan State's got really good guards. Purdue's got really good guards. Ohio State, brings in some really good guards and has some returning. So it's going to be packed in there from the guard standpoint, in my mind. But, he's going to be a focal point on this team, and there's a chance he goes out and scores. I mean, last year he averages 13.1, but like you said, when Hoiberg kind of finally turned him loose, those numbers got a lot higher. So, first, second, third, somewhere in there, probably second or third, all Big Ten as a guard for me.
Yeah, it's fair. He finished starting on February. So February and March, 30, 24, 22, 22, 20, 11, 20, 11, and 23 points. I don't know what that average is off the top of my head. My guess would be right about 20 a game, somewhere in that range. And he had that stretch of 5 straight 20-plus points. Like, dude can just get hot from three in an instant. He can take some tough ones too, but I think that's that, especially this year where he is going to be the leading scorer. I would assume, like, you just live with those a bit. You live with the kind of deep heat checks, the ones where if it goes in, then that crowd's going nuts, and if he misses, it's like, all right, why'd you take that one? I think if you're Hoiberg, you have to live with that. One other point, and then before we probably kind of move on here, is like this team, brings in 6 new guys. They have 6 seniors on the team, whether it be COVID year senior or like just an actual senior. Like, they're going to be one of the they're going to be one of the oldest, if not like the oldest team in the Big Ten off the top of my head. At least for dudes that are in rotation, like, I don't know of too many else. Like, all 6 seniors are going to play. They have 1 junior in Wiltshire for sure that'll play. Blaze Kita's another junior that can maybe get some backup minutes. That will probably have to get some backup minutes. That's 8 dudes that are all upperclassmen in the rotation, and then you got Lawrence, who's a sophomore, Lloyd, redshirt freshman, and then 2 freshmen that I don't think play much this year. So I think that's going to be interesting too, right? Like, obviously they don't have a ton of winning experience. Some of the transfers do. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they just have a ton of college basketball experience, period. And that does, I think, stand for something.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, kind of the theme over the last 4 or 5 years has been, get old and stay old in college basketball. And that was kind of one of the points I was alluding to as we talked about IU is, IU's brought in some really highly ranked guys before, but there's, kind of the era of the, one and done guy is going to make a huge impact on your team. Like, to me, that's kind of faded a little bit. It's rarer now than it is common. There are some one and done guys that make a really big impact, but there's a lot more that don't, that get drafted really high in the NBA draft based on what their athletic potential is and if that skill can eventually match up to that athletic potential. And we saw that when we talk about Romeo Langford versus, Jordan Hood-Schifino. Romeo didn't really have a large impact on winning at IU, but I think he was still a lottery pick. JHS did, but you never really know how that's going to come in until you actually see it in fruition on the court at the college level. And to me, that get old, stay old, Nebraska's doing that, brings in a bunch of efficient dudes, a whole bunch of dudes that can score the ball. I'm gonna bet for them to win more games than whatever they're predicted to win. Let's put it that way.
What's your floor and ceiling for them then in the Big Ten?
Oh man, so I'm gonna say my ceiling is 7th or 8th in the Big Ten, and an outside chance to make the tournament. Okay. So like if the Big Ten has one of those type of years where 6, 7, 8 teams get in, maybe they make the tourney as an 8 through a 10, 11. Well, I guess if they're the last team in, so that'd be like a 10 or 11 seed. And, floor would be, I guess, 12th. I think the bottom 2 are pretty much set in the Big Ten. So
Honestly, I was expecting you to say higher than that.
Oh, well, I mean, I think a jump for Nebraska to 7th or 8th is
Yeah.
that's a big
No,
jump for
that'd be
Nebraska.
huge for him. Yeah,
Right.
I think I'm pretty similar. I would say, yeah, like the floor is still 12th. Like things could fall apart. Ceilings set. I'll put it at 7th. I think they most likely fall in the 8-9 range is where it's at.
Okay.
8 to 10, I should say. So yeah, I'll put ceiling 7th if everything hits. Offense is there. Defense is Tominaga has a good year. Yeah, I could see them being right at the middle of the pack, but being a team that legitimately teams don't want to play. So, do we have anything else on Nebraska?
I do not. Jeff thinks that he's going to command a lot more defensive attention this year, and not sure he handles that. But
That was
I'm not.
more what
I
I
mean,
was alluding. That was what I was alluding to when I said he was be the number one.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, Walker, I think people really, really undervalued who Walker was.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Even Greasel. But
yeah, Greasel just wasn't efficient. Like, I don't know.
But he's still a dude that could get him the ball. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch Tominaga no matter what. I think he could be streaky for sure, as T1D Steve says. But we'll move on to Northwestern, our last team today. Before we have one more show that will be next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. I think again, definitely next Tuesday. Time most likely 6. Potential to change. Northwestern 21-10, kind of the surprise, not kind of the surprise team of the Big Ten. 12-8 in the Big Ten. They have a second round tournament exit. 88 in offense, 22nd in defense. Probably, I don't want to. If I'm wrong, somebody definitely correct me. But probably the best season in Northwestern history, unless there's something like way back when that I don't know about. I mean, when you talk about what was it, 2015 or whatever, was one of their first times making the tourney. So, to have this success, I especially predicted when I think they were projected 13th by some sites, 12th, whatever. Just kind of had a good blend of everything needed. They do lose Chase Audige, Titus Verhoeven, Julian Roper, and Robbie Barron. So they lose 2 starters and one dude that played that was a backup for sure, and then Roper was kind of in and out. Bring in 6 dudes, 3 freshmen, and Jordan Clayton, Blake Barkley, and Parker Strauss. 3 transfers in Blake Preston, who's a big. Justin Mullins is a wing, and then Ryan Langborg is more of a 2-guard. Where do you want to start with them? Because this is a team that I go back and forth on, in large part because I just don't quite know what exactly this team's going to look like again, both offensively and defensively. So where do you want to start?
Real quick, I just realized we didn't even mention the 3 freshmen that are coming in for Nebraska when we were talking them. Well, one's a redshirt freshman, and he's one of the higher ranked players they've had in a little while at 111 on the composite. So there's a chance for some of those to make an impact, especially in my mind, the redshirt freshman, based on some of the stuff I read and him being that highly ranked. When he officially committed and kind of a 6'6" point guard. He's listed at that.
Yep.
Looked like a super athletic dude. But in terms of Northwestern, I was surprised because in my mind, I know they lost more. But in my mind, I'm like, well, they lost Audige. Yeah. And I kind of pull the numbers up and like they only returned 55% of their games started. So this team did lose more than I think people would think from the outside, just looking at it. But I think part of that is because last year this team was Boo Buie and Chase Audige for the most part, and then everybody else was in a supporting role around that. And one of my big questions coming into this year, to me, Boo Buie has the potential to maybe be the best guard in the Big Ten next year, or he has the potential to be the 10th best guard in the Big Ten next year. Because to me, he's chaos on the court, and Audige to me was the anchor to Bowie's chaos in terms of just being really stable, physical, athletic type of a dude out there that would play both sides of the ball extremely well. So I'm wondering if, there's going to be that Robin to Bowie's Batman this year or not. And if they can find that, because maybe Barnheiser makes a jump. Lafayette prodigy area from around here, right? He went to McCutcheon, I believe. And I thought he made a pretty significant jump last year. Really high energy guy that likes to bruise and bat around, but actually has a pretty decent shot to go along with that. And maybe he makes a bigger jump, this year, but I don't, in terms of what they brought in, whether it's freshmen or whether it's transfers, I don't see real high impact players. So is it going to be Ty Berry? Is it going to be Barnheiser that makes a jump to be that second guy? Because if they don't have a second big time dude on this team next year, I don't know that the supporting cast is good enough to come close to matching what they did last year.
Yeah, I think if they have it, it's going to be Langborg, the transfer from Princeton. He's a dude that he didn't shoot great last year, 34%, shot 40% the year prior. Has enough athleticism to him that he got to the rim a decent bit. And I know it's Ivy League. It's not the same as the Big Ten by any means, but I still liked what he has. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't quite know what this team is. Audige was huge, just both sides. I mean, him and McConnell shared defensive player of the year, I think, or if they didn't, then he either won or he was number 2. That. Whatever. He was top 2 perimeter defender in the Big Ten. And that's, he was streaky. I was watching some film back on him, and that IU game at Northwestern, he came out and hit 4 threes in the first half. As they kind of got this 20-25 point lead. I think he provided a lot. I like what they did with Mullins. I see the vision. Justin Mullins, a transfer from Denver, sophomore. He's a dude that, he's a fine shooter. He's a capable shooter. But he's more this wing athletic slasher, is really going to get into guys defensively. I really like his screen navigation. So I think that's what they did with these transfers. They're okay, we lost Chase Audige. What can we do to try kind of replace that? Okay, Justin Mullins kind of fits that mold. They lost Verhoeven as this backup big, and they're okay, Blake Preston can kind of do some of those things. I think he moves a little bit better defensively. Okay, that's fine. And then okay, we do need a second scorer. Maybe Langberg can be that. I don't know if any of the freshmen play this year too much. Blake Barkley would be the one. He's a 4 that can kind of spread out and shoot. I like some of his playmaking because that's the one piece that they don't have filled is I don't know. I don't think Barron was phenomenal or anything, but he was a 4 that could space. What did he shoot on the year? This is great live podcasting by me. Probably don't have it up.
You're asking who shot? Barron?
Barron shot.
He shot
35%.
Yeah.
From 3. So
I got it. I got it in front of me, Joe. Just ask me.
Okay. He's the one piece that you're hoping Barnheiser does, and then Mullins can slide in. But I agree. I just don't think there's going to be a ton of depth to this team. I don't think they'll have a proven really backup guard. Only one that's I semi-trust is Barry right now. So I think there are going to be a lot of questions with this team. And just the defense, they were number 22. Does that hold? Now they're a team that, similar to Nebraska, kind of, forced a lot of threes, packed it in, overhelped, things like that. Pretty physical. Can they kind of replicate that with new pieces? And if they can do that, then they'll be fine. Bowie will do what he does. I'm also clipping that. I'm just going to clip you saying basically Bowie's the 10th best point guard in the Big Ten. And
no, that's not what I said. I said could be, and I did not say point guard. I said guard. So that's shooting guard or point guard. I said he has the chance to be because I know the dude did average 2.5 turnovers and only shot 32%, right? On 6 threes a game. So it's not like his game's perfect. He's a high volume scorer because he had to be on that team. But to me, Audige provided some stability, whereas Bowie could be more hit or miss in any given instance or any given stretch. And I just think they're going to have somebody that provides that stability with him for them. We'll talk floor ceiling in a minute, but, the last time Northwestern kind of had a big run, a really good season, and people thought it was going to sustain, it dropped really, really quick. And I could see that same thing happening.
Yeah. downside, I guess, of Bowie. There's he's a great player and all that. You don't really have to say that to me. I was team Jameer Young should have been first team All Big Ten over him last year, but that's a drum I'll still beat quietly. But Bowie's still very good. Lots going to be on his shoulders. Can this second person step up? Nicholson was kind of this diamond in the rough. I didn't have any expectations for him coming in the year, and he turned out to be a solid, 20 minute a game big. Can he replicate that again? So excited to see where Barnheiser goes. I think he's probably the guy on the team that you can be like, okay, this is the dude that'll make a jump.
Right.
Whether it be what they need exactly or not, like he probably is that dude that has that potential.
No, I agree 100% in terms of him being the guy that, quite frankly, I think he needs to. He needs to make a jump if this team's going to replicate success. And I just, when we look at those Nebraska transfers, I just look at where they played, the leagues they played in, and what they did relative to Northwestern. And I'm like, this is the best we could do, but maybe he sees something that none of us did, kind of like we all saw him grab a player on the sideline that he didn't see last year. So
all right. What's your floor and ceiling for them? We're gonna wrap this up, I think.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to say the ceiling is. I didn't put a bunch of thought into them, actually. I'm going to say their ceiling is 6th or 7th in the Big Ten as a ceiling. And I'm going to say their floor is 12th. Yeah, I could see that year where they really, really drop.
I thought I was going to have to be the guy that comes on here and be like, you know what, I'm low on Northwestern and all that. I do say I reserve my right to change because it is July 25th.
Right.
And I will dive into more film. But yeah, I was right with you. Like ceiling, I think they're and then as I go through, I'm high on Ohio State. Obviously, we know Purdue and Michigan State. I'm higher on Maryland's. Like that's already 4 teams that I know for sure I'm higher than them on. Wisconsin will be up there. So like now that just puts them in the 6 to 7 range as a ceiling for me. And then floor, could they be worse than Nebraska if things go bad? Yeah, they could. So yeah, floor. Yeah, I didn't want to just agree with you, but yeah, floor would probably be 12th for me. My guess would probably be that they're, I would say they're probably close to Nebraska, maybe a half step ahead, and that maybe they're the 8, Nebraska 9 type thing. But yeah, ceiling 6, floor 12, and I think nothing should be taken away from last year. I think they had some things break their way. And Audige was a dude, Bowie was a dude. I don't want to take credit away from them by any means, but I think what they did was a little bit harder to replicate than some other teams.
Exactly. And the thing, when you have an elite defender at that position that can disrupt everything before it happens, out on the perimeter, you know what I'm saying? When you have an elite defender that's a guard that can disrupt action before it starts, that does a heck of a lot in terms of contributing to your team defense and where that ranks, I guess. And I look down through here and I'm like, okay, who's going to be that guy? Because it's not like they're defending the post extremely well with anybody out there. So who's going to be out on the perimeter that's going to be elite defensively? And the Mullins kid from Denver is the only one that I look at and say, all right, he's an elite defender. So we'll see.
Yep. I think I agree with you.
Braggs is going to clip this and send it to Carmen now.
Oh yeah. I think Northwestern's probably. We'll see what consensus is on them. I assume they're going to be the team that I'm most low on compared to others. Because even we've gone through these. I'm like, hey, I see this path for Penn State. I see a path for Minnesota. Not that I don't see one for Northwestern, but relative to consensus, I could see myself being lower on them. And we'll see what happens. Do you have anything else on any of these teams?
I do not. I'm looking forward to who we doing the next time around. I don't remember who we got left.
Illinois, Michigan, and Rutgers.
And then we'll have a standalone Purdue show, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, that'll be kind of post-alumni game we'll figure out all that stuff as we
Yeah.
go. So Illinois, just preview for next week. Illinois still has 1 roster spot. They are definitely looking for somebody. Michigan has 2 roster spots. They are definitely looking for people in the transfer portal. Rutgers has 3 spots and then it kind of seems like those are kind of locked up, and they're kind of just waiting on formalities to get the names. So that's why they're kind of at the end. Just wanted to give them time to try to figure out the roster as we preview them. We appreciate everybody tuning in. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. It's just, going to help us keep putting out good content. Like Craig said, we have 1 show next Tuesday. We're going to do a Purdue preview sometime soon. And then I'm sure once kind of October hits, we'll start getting back into, more preview shows, maybe some interviews, things like that. So appreciate it if everybody would like and subscribe. You can follow Craig at Kraig Bowers 34 on Twitter, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yep. It does. It does sound right.
So follow him at Kraig Bowers 34 on Twitter. Join Boiler Diehards if you haven't already. Group of, what are you guys up to? 12,000, 11,000?
Yeah, 12,000 plus, I think.
12,000 plus Purdue fans. So definitely join them there on Facebook if you haven't already. You can follow me on Twitter at JoeJacksonCBB or at Feed the Post. I also started a YouTube page. I have a Purdue video out there, definitely covering Miles Colvin and Lance Jones. So if you haven't watched that, go check that out. I'm doing previews for all the newcomers in the Big Ten. Think I hit everything. We're on Apple, Google, and Spotify if you want to listen to us on audio. So like I said, we'll be back next Tuesday. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And then, we'll catch you in the next one.
Let's do it.